Part 10. Are we just doing expenses now? Yeah. So if you really can't figure out what you earn, let's just do it on a monthly basis. And if you get paid every 2 weeks, do 2 pay periods. If you get paid every week, do 4 pay periods. I know that there's a little bit of a buffer, 4.33 weeks a month, but figure out for the lowest for 2 pay periods, if you're doing every 2 weeks or 4, what you get paid in net income. So in other words, what goes in the bank, and then figure out what goes out. And you might need to do this for a month or two, or you might have a better idea. Certainly get your fixed numbers out there, because it's, if you're paying rent, you know what that is. If you're paying your car payment, you know what that is. If you're paying your insurance, you know what that is, right? So add those up, and the income, you got to do income versus expenses versus outgo, right? So all the money you pay out, right? And you can do it as simple as the cash you take out of a bank, but it's not that easy anymore. But you have to include credit cards. Anything you put on a credit card and don't pay in that month, right? So that's where it gets really tricky. Everybody's got credit cards nowadays. But anyways, income minus outgo equals net. And so if you spend more than you bring in, then that's not bad. It's just, you're negative, right? Either you're supplementing it with credit cards or you're supplementing it with your savings. Some months you will be more negative than positive, especially when you got to buy a refrigerator or something. Just believe me. Now, in general, you need to have a plan, right, that just says, okay. So nobody ever says, I've listed some of the fixed and I've listed some of the variable. If you're really anal, you would yell at me and say, well, you should have been putting away $20 a month for a refrigerator. Not the way most people think and work. Or you should have had, $5,000 on hand, right? You should have 6 months of salary on hand, right? It's money's not. Yes, you're true. And believe me, if you get these people and you're able to do that, then so be it. You're better than me. But anyways, here are some numbers that I've seen on websites, and they're good rules of thumbs as to whether they'll even give you a mortgage or something. But 30%, no more than 30 is one of the numbers. I realize that some people pay 40 or 50, and that's not bad. Each market is dependent, and maybe you're not earning enough money today, but you need to look at a way to get into these number thing. Obviously, if you're paying 10% of your income for your house, good for you. But anyways, 30%, when you're looking at housing and you're earning a certain amount of money, you can't guarantee you're going to make that money for 30 years, but so be it. When you're looking for a house, that should be your or renting or whatever it is. You should find a way to get that down below 30. Your total transportation costs, not only your car payment but your other stuff, 25%. Those are two numbers. Some people just don't know those numbers. I don't know why they don't know that numbers. They graduate from high school, they don't know those numbers. Hell, they don't even know how to do in versus out or a balance sheet or whatever you want to call it, right? And then you'll see these numbers, 5 to 20%. I guess it helps to save some, but you always want to pay bad bets down first, such as your credit cards or whatnot. But if you can afford 20, you should think about 20. If you can't afford 20, start at 5 or whatever you got to do. Or save nothing. You can do anything you want to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Sometimes, sometimes some years in life, your income equals your outgo and your net is 0, and you're not planning for your retirement. But not everybody has that privilege, right? Sometimes your housing costs are higher, just in your rent or whatever in your area, and you don't have your roommate craps out on you, and you don't want to do that anymore. Again, it's good and bad. It's lucky and unlucky. Using your credit cards is not balancing. Right, so just that's the really hard part of life, and the interest you pay on credit cards needs to be something that you put into the negative category when you start to get around there. Eventually, you'll want to take your outgoes and categorize them so you can get to these numbers. Whether you got 30, so 30 plus 25 is 55, and just add 5% savings at 60. So really, the stuff that you're variably paying should be in the 40%, right? Just by I'm doing math. Hopefully, that's not too hard for you. And so if those numbers are higher, you can't spend as much as 40, but you shouldn't be spending over 40. And matter of fact, you should think about increasing whatever or setting aside whatever. But if you're starting to hit 40% of your income on eating out at Applebee's, then you need to cut back. And I'm sure your parents told you that. Now I've told you it. Everybody's told you it, right? But it's hard because all your friends are out and it's Friday, and you need to buy them all around of drinks, even if you don't have the money. But that's what credit cards are for. Good for you. But it's not balancing. Do some observation on your balancing. I always try to keep a handle on that. I'm not totally anal about it, but you'll never get anywhere if you don't know how to balance it. This is 101. It's your future. And you need to look at, when you're buying stuff, cost versus benefit. Fancy pair of shoes, okay, you can argue a benefit, right? But really it's not beneficial. What's the cost of this? What's the benefit? That's another analysis you need to be able to do. It's a standard financial analysis. This goes back to the, if I'm a car and I'm buying a new car and they can offer me, instead of 5%, 4.9, they're going to offer me 1.9, or I can get $1,500 cash back. If you can't determine whether 1.9% versus 4.9 is or isn't a better deal than $1,500 cash back at the beginning, and what your rates would be, then you're doomed. So you need to attain that skill. By the way, the 1.9% is usually not as good as the $1,500, but you got to be able to calculate which is a little bit better. Everybody sees 1.9%, and that must be better. Look at this, a lower rate. I already went over cars earlier, but if you can't do that calculation, now I gave you a very specific example, probably not a big penalty between the two, but if you can't do that benefit and figure out how to get it done, this is option A, B, and C, and which are the relative parameters that you care about, and which is the better value, then you'll never determine better value. And you're going to outgo money that you didn't need to, and eventually that's going to make you poorer than you would have been.